The 7 most frequently asked questions in behavioral interviews, already with the STAR response model, which is the model that will get you approved in the interview. Hi, how are you? I'm Romulo Gutierrez. This is the Job Room channel. I've been a recruiter for 27 years, and I'm going to tell you about 7 common interview questions that cause many candidates to be rejected, along with STAR answers, which is exactly the kind of response that pleases the manager or recruiter in a behavioral interview. First common question: tell me about a time when you had to work as part of a team. So don't give theoretical answers where you don't provide an example. I'll give an example here for an automotive industry manager. Then you can think about how this applies to your own field as well. I could say, look, there was a situation where one of the vehicle painting machines had a very serious problem. So that's the situation. From there, I took on a task, which was to carry out a technical inspection of the machine together with the maintenance management team. We identified that one of the machine's sensors was broken. From there, we took on a task. Situation, task, action. The action we took was to call the supplier of that machine and ask them to make an immediate visit so we could solve the problem. And the result was that, together with the maintenance management team, we worked as a team, and in less than 3 hours, the vehicle painting machine was up and running again, and we succeeded. And we saved $50,000 with this teamwork action. The maintenance manager and I were able to implement this in the automotive industry. So notice that the question, I would even say it invites you to give a theoretical answer. Oh, I work really well in a team, I find it very easy. But you're not going to do that. You say you work well in a team, and you already come with a STAR example telling the situation, the task, the action, and the result. Now I'll tell you the second question. And for all of them, I'll give an example, okay? The second question would be, describe a situation where you had to deal with a difficult coworker. It's a tough question. It's a behavioral question. And I could say the following. There was a situation. So, for example, I could start my answer by saying, I usually respect everyone and work with people who sometimes have a bit more complicated behavior. I'll give you an example. At the last company where I was a sales leader for home appliances, one of the salespeople was always late, especially after lunch. That's the situation. From there, I took it upon myself to invite him for a coffee, and I talked to him, asking why he was always late after lunch. He explained to me that he had to take his daughter to school during that time, and that's why he ended up being 10 or 15 minutes late. So I took action. The action was, he used to go to lunch at 1 o'clock, so I changed his lunch break with his agreement to start at 1:20 p.m. so that he could come back at 2:20 p.m. and not be late anymore. And the result was very productive, because we were able to strengthen our working relationship and also solve the problem of his tardiness. So notice that once again a behavioral question comes up, how did I work with a difficult person? And I bring a STAR example with situation, task, action, and result. Now let's go to the third question, which is common in all behavioral interviews, and I say this is true all over the world. Okay. Tell me about a time when you had to solve a difficult problem. Tell me about a difficult problem you solved. And here, honestly, there's no way to give a theoretical answer. Oh, I'm really good at problem solving. I can handle tough problems. Let's get straight to the practical part. So I could say, I'll keep switching up the professions. By the way, leave your profession in the comments so I can use it as an example in the next videos here on the Job Room channel. But I could say, look, when I worked as a marketing analyst, there was a pretty complicated problem. The situation was that a certain product, one of our deodorants, had a really bad reputation. That was the situation. The online comments about the deodorant were very negative. For example, then I move on to the task. From there, I took on the task of checking the most critical comments, the ones where people were angriest about the product, and started selecting them. Based on the most complicated comments, I took action. I sat down with the management of the chemical division of the deodorant industry, as well as with the production team, and showed them the complaints. From there, we did intensive work, both in redefining the product and in marketing actions. And the result was that after 2 years, we started collecting positive testimonials and the sales of this product. an example called Nivea Black and White, we managed to increase its sales by 40%. This is just one example, but it's to help you understand that it's possible to create answers using examples. I always say the worst answers in an interview are those that are improvised, completely improvised, and those where you don't have an example. Every time you can give examples in your answers, you bring real-life experience to your response, showing your practical experience on the subject. That will definitely give you a much better chance of passing the interview. Okay, so let's keep going. The next question is actually, before we move on to the next one, which is the fourth, if you want to simulate an interview, practice an interview where I'll give you feedback, whether you did well, whether you didn't, what you need to improve live and online. Just message this WhatsApp number you see on the screen, international code 55119770654117. The prices for these services are low for subscribers of the Job Room channel. Here, you'll never run out of videos. Every Wednesday at 1 in the afternoon, I post a new video for you. So subscribe and leave your like. Let's go to the fourth question. Tell me about a time when you made a mistake. And here you can also use the STAR method. My tip is, when talking about mistakes in an interview, don't mention a terrible mistake, one that couldn't be fixed or a fatal error for your profession. Don't say that. Talk about a real mistake. You can say, look, there was a situation. For example, when I worked as a nurse, a patient needed to have a brain CT scan and I made a mistake. I picked up the wrong report. And because I took this wrong report from another patient, the patient ended up having an MRI instead. From there, I was given a task. I had to explain to the technician who was going to do the exam that I had the wrong medical record with me. That way, we took action. The action was I went to get the correct medical record, and that delayed the correct exam, which was the CT scan, by about 30 minutes. And the result I got from that was, from then on, every time I take a patient to do an exam, I make sure to check if the medical record really belongs to the patient. I always do a double check so I don't make that kind of mistake again. So it's important to mention the STAR method and also say what you are doing to correct that mistake. Let's move on to the fifth question. The fifth question is, tell me about a time when you went above and beyond to help a client, beyond what was expected to help a client. Another behavioral question that requires the STAR method. So I'm going to give another example from a different profession, and then you can think of examples from your own profession and later write them here in the comments so I can interact with you. You could say, look, there was a situation when I worked as a receptionist at an international hotel in Rio de Janeiro, which is where I live in Brazil, where I worked in Rio de Janeiro, where a guest needed a room, but the hotel was completely full. That was the situation. From there, I took on a task. I checked with other hotels in our chain and found that all the rooms in the chain were full in Rio de Janeiro because it was vacation season. So I immediately took decisive action, meaning I promptly got in touch with other prominent hotel chains, our direct competitors, and diligently looked for a suitable room for that important guest. The result was that the guest not only left a public compliment on our hotel's page, but also became a regular customer during their stays at the Sheraton in Rio de Janeiro. In other words, notice that once again I brought up the situation, task, action, and result to show how I helped a customer. I went above and beyond what was expected. Let's move on to the sixth question now, from these behavioral questions that are present in job interviews, and the best model really is the STAR model. Okay, if you haven't left your like yet, please do so to help us grow this project of making job interviews international for the whole world. So, question 6. How do you deal with tight work deadlines? How do you handle tight work deadlines? So, could you give an example? Normally, I handle tight deadlines with a lot of technique and calm, making sure I accomplish what's necessary. I have an example from the last time. There was a situation when I was the manager of a pet shop, where there were 3 pets from the same owner and they were going to an event. But we only had an hour and a half to get all the grooming, trimming, and work done on those pets. Situation. The first thing I had to do was assign 3 team members to handle that job because this was a very important client. She referred other customers to our business. So the action was that these 3 employees, along with myself, managed to get all 3 pets clean and looking great for the event in just 1 hour. And the result was that our client was very satisfied with how quickly we met the deadline, and she ended up recommending us to many other clients for a long time as well. So notice once again that the interesting thing about star responses is that you invite the recruiter to immerse themselves, to step into your daily life, your routine, and to understand how you used to work. This brings a huge richness to your interview. And the 7th question, which I think is perhaps the most complicated in these behavioral interviews, is tell me about a situation where you showed initiative. Tell me about a situation where you demonstrated initiative. To answer this question, I've put together a complete tutorial with the answer to this question and 7 more behavioral questions that might come up in your interviews. Hey, check it out here and watch it. It's really going to help you. Rooting for you. Take care and see you next time. Bye-bye.